Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. I'm really excited to tee up the next session. We have a customer spotlight on the South Central Los Angeles Regional Center. And our guest of honor today is Yuhala. And before we get into that, I just want to encourage everybody to feel free to leverage the chat box, ask any questions, or drop in any comments that you might have during this presentation. I think you'll find this really enlightening and very interesting. There's a lot of really great things that are happening out of the South Central Los Angeles Regional Center. And without further ado, I'd love to introduce Yuhala. Yuhala, how are you today?
I'm fine. I'm fine. Thank you, Samantha.
That's great. So I know we have a very limited amount of time with you today. And so without further ado, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Introduce yourself, and then maybe perhaps tell us a little bit about the South Central Los Angeles Regional Center and all of the great things that are happening there.
Okay, great. So my name is Yuhala Hailemariam. I've been working with the South Central Los Angeles Regional Center for the last 25 years. I've been working as a MIS manager, and in my capacity, I have been overseeing our technological needs. Just to tell you a little bit about our regional center, we are a nonprofit organization that is committed to providing services to people who are developmentally disabled. Our services include intake assessment, diagnosis, and lifelong service coordination. The services we provide are very vital to the communities we serve, and as such, our service coordinators continuously engage and monitor all service deliveries.
That's great. Thanks for giving us that quick little introduction. So, with that being said, I mean, this whole event is about working and the new ways that people are working and the approaches that we've taken over the past year. And we all know that the pandemic happened. So I'm just curious, tell me all about how the center, what were the challenges that you faced once COVID arrived on the scene, if you will, and how did you and your team respond to those challenges?
So when the coronavirus forced us to shift from working in our offices to work remotely, we were really very grateful for having the insight to implement Citrix Cloud as our portal for accessing all our application documents and files. Because we had that already implemented within our organization, the shift happened very quickly and seamlessly. What we did was we told our staff to use their personal devices and continue to access their documents and files from wherever they are located. We additionally provided access to their voicemail and phone services through the portal. And also we added additional services like Zoom and e-document services for creating and signing documents electronically. And all that was done through the Citrix Cloud services. And so as bad as it was, we were able to kind of shift from working from the office to working from home with very little effort.
Right. And so with all those changes, and I know you mentioned everything happened really quickly, can you tell us a little bit about the user experience? So the people that are doing this community outreach, what was their experience when shifting to a remote environment?
Yeah, so one of the biggest challenges was that depending on, of course, where they're located, their internet services might not be as strong as it should be, and that presented some challenges in terms of getting connected to through the portal. But for those folks that are a little bit challenged, we were able to provide sites where they could go in and work from those remote sites. But for the most part, it is really just having, transitioning from the office to just working remotely, working from home and managing the workload, that they were used to. So that was a lot more difficult than than the transition in terms of accessing their files or documents, because they were used to doing that at the office as well. So in terms of that, there wasn't much change, but there were other challenges in terms of connections and so on and so forth.
Right. I know. I feel like it is a challenge, especially when you're used to working in a certain way. But then when you realize the ease of working, remotely or the benefits that you can garner from that, I think it is very powerful. So, moving on, from the user experience, there was a little bit of adapting there. Now, would you say that everyone is currently remote, or have you started to bring people back into the center, or how is that all working for you?
So, for now, we are still, most of our staff is still working from remotely. They are able to complete their task and continue to engage with the people the people they serve, and so that has been going very well. Now, the plan is, depending on how what the state of California decides to do, we'll be bringing our folks gradually. We're going to bring a few people at a time to start acclimating them to the old working environment. But that doesn't mean that we're going to continue, or we're going to just shift back to working from the office. As a matter of fact, one of the things that we understood from this experience is that we are really fully capable of working remotely, and that we don't need as much space, office space as we did in the past. And so most likely the shift will continue to be going in the other directions. That is, most people will be working from home, and a few people working from the office. I think that's what we anticipate to see going in the future. So in terms of that, I mean the role that the Citrix Cloud plays for us delivering, or for in our capacity to deliver services, would be quite vital, and that would be part of our component in terms of doing that.
Right. So taking more of a hybrid approach. Now, I know you've talked a lot about Citrix Cloud. Was this motion, as far as transitioning to the cloud, was that in place before COVID, or was COVID really the impetus for you to make the shift to transitioning over to the cloud?
Yeah. So no. When we started out shifting, from working from home, we still had the traditional Citrix portal. Our staff were accessing it by logging on to the services that are set up here at the office, and that really, one of the things that we found out was the access was a lot more challenging in terms of getting connected, and that kind of preempted us into looking into the cloud services, and that seems to really work very, very well in terms of a very robust, very reliable connection, and then services as well. So yes, when we started out, we really didn't have that, but a few months later, we vigorously went ahead and trying to get the cloud services set up and configured, and we were able to do that very quickly, and so the shift happened within a couple of months or so.
Right. Yeah, it's so interesting how quickly things can change. If I were to ask you, what was the biggest surprise that you were able, or that you have experienced when moving everyone remote?
So yeah, there were some surprises. One of the things that was quite surprising to the management staff is that the work continued as it was previously. As a matter of fact, even the performance went up in most cases. And so we were able to accomplish a lot more. Our workforce really was working even much harder than before, and the communities were provided with those vital services that they really needed in this very difficult time. And so that was quite a surprise. For most of the leadership and management, the thinking was that you have to have a very controlled, very a setup where you can monitor people's performance. But as a matter of fact, it was the opposite, quite the opposite, that we found out that as people were working from home, they were a lot more productive than when they were working from the office.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I mean, you said a lot of really key words there, as far as robust and, wanting to control and monitor, but then also I think, one of the other things that you highlighted, which is productivity, right? So your team, I guess, as you said, surprised you, right? As far as how productive they were at home, even in spite of all the distractions that they might have. But I think part of it goes back to one of the earlier comments that you had made, which is, the user experience and creating that and making it seamless and allowing everyone to have access easily and be able to do their job. And, I think when you just take a step back outside of all of the technology and, having to move everybody, I think, and I'd love to get your take on this in a second, is, the bigger picture of what you're doing in your community and, what was important. So I'm curious, if we just take a step back and talk a little bit about, how did that work from a community perspective? I imagine that a lot of your programs and services that you offer were in person.
Yes,
how is it all right? How is it all working now with, with all of these, people who have, different needs, who are expecting a different type of service, and now your team who supports them are remote?
Yeah, and that was quite challenging because you're right. Most of our services are delivered in person. We have folks that require, a one-to-one sessions or one-to-one services, and those were quite challenging in terms of being able to deliver that. And then also, we have these frequent meetings with the families we serve, and those as well were quite challenging. So we had to adjust in terms of providing those kind of conversation now, either through the voice or using products like electronic products that allows us to communicate. And so the shift in terms of providing services was not easy. I mean, it was quite challenging. What was great about the having an infrastructure that gives you that flexibility is that our workforce is ready to really go above and beyond to provide the services that our communities were requiring. In terms of really providing those services, there were a lot of adjustment that we as a regional center and then our vendor partners that had to adjust to because again pre-COVID those services was provided one-to-one basis in person, and now they had to shift and use other alternatives to continue engage with the families they serve.
Right. So I can imagine that, I mean, you really had probably two choices. One, either do everything that you just said, or say, okay, we're not going to be able to support these people who do need help, right? And who have become dependent on your services that you provide. So, I think it's amazing. And it's just great that we were even able to play a small piece in that as far as you continuing to support these people instead of just saying, well, you know what, unfortunately, we're going to have to put a pause because of the situation that we're in right now. Everything's come to a standstill. But you, I think, persevered and leveraged technology and I'm sure many other tools that you had to achieve something that I just think, again, is just very special and I'm sure very appreciated. I know I personally have shared this story in your website with people, just kind of highlighting the amazing things that are happening. And I think, when we initially spoke, you had mentioned, yes, it's for people with developmental disabilities, but also a special community, right, that you said might not have access to different resources. So again, I just think that that was really great. So I know we're coming down to the end here. Yuhala, is there anything else that you wanted to share before we close out?
Yeah. Again, technology plays a big part in terms of providing services, and in our case, because because what we do really, really make a difference in terms of giving access to those or voices to those folks that really do not have that because of their disabilities. They're limited in terms of the services that they can access. And so what we do is extremely critical for those folks and then for their families. And having the right resources as a tool to do that is extremely critical. And from that perspective, having having partnering with Citrix and then providing the services that we were able to do is really just, in my opinion, there isn't really any price to that because during those very difficult times, our service coordinators were continuously engaging with the families because they had the resources to be able to do that, or the technology to support them to be able to do that. Otherwise, it would have been quite difficult, and we don't know how that would have impacted our families. We know that it would create even more hardship than what they're going through, on a regular basis. And so the technology plays a big part, and we're glad that we were able to leverage Citrix to that capacity.
Yeah, that's, again, like I said, as I said at the beginning of the session, I think it's a very touching and great story and amazing efforts that you're doing along with the rest of the center. Again, we're grateful that we were able to play, I'm sure, a small piece in that, but again, I just, want to thank you for everything that you're doing for your local community, and thank you for the time today. I really appreciate it, and I hope our attendees did as well. And Yuhala, thank you for your time. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.